Playtime with Percy. Now, this game just completely blew me away. Full stop. Don't get me wrong, I was always excited since I learned about the game from Squeaks to Corgay during a previous video.
There's this one game that I've been actually beta testing for. It's called Playtime with Percy, and it's a Fnaf fan game that's coming up. It has a really unique style, but the biggest appeal to the game to me, even past that, the gameplay is really unique, and it does something I wish more games did. It experiments, right?
I joined the Discord for updates and stuff and didn't think too much of it, but I recently got my hands on the game and man, I have a lot to say. If you plan on making a challenging, exciting, and highly engaging sit and survive experience, I suggest you start taking notes from here on out, because this game had me totally captivated from start to finish. Most of the time when I play a FNAF fan game, I think about the pros and cons. What do I like and what do I not like? If I were to show my mental pros and cons list, there would be a major imbalance in the direction of the pros. Now, I could spend longer talking up the game, but let's actually talk about what makes this such a great experience. First, I do want to disclose that I was given a download for this game about a week early by the developer, Fazzy Funbear, although I will be trying to keep my review as honest as possible. And second, this video should be going up around the same time as the game's release, so I genuinely implore you, if you have a computer and some spare time, give this game a shot. You will not regret it. With that being said, let's get into the game. Playtime with Percy starts us off with a cute opening cutscene, where someone who seems to just be referred to as Boss calls up the protagonist, Nick, and gives us the usual pre-night context we need for any FNAF fan game. In this case, the boss needs Nick to look over Percy's playhouse for the week, as the building is due for demolition on Friday morning, and is full of valuables that are ready to be sold by the boss. Valuables that he doesn't want anyone stealing before the building's scheduled demolition. Our eyes and ears Nicholas here doesn't seem too interested, but then the boss offers him $250 and a gift basket, so he accepts, leading us to Monday night. Monday night is surprisingly chaotic for an opening night. At least that's how it feels upon a first playthrough, because trust me when I say this, it gets much work. We only have two animatronics to deal with on this night, those being Charlie Cat and Mother Moose. Charlie and Mother have similar yet polar opposite mechanics from one another and act as our only risk on night one. Both of these little rascals can appear in either vent seen on the left or right of the room, although the way to react to each one is where they differ. If Charlie Cat is seen, you just have to stare them down until they eventually run away in fear. On the flip side, if Mother Moose is seen, you have to flip up your cameras or your pal Percy to get them to go away. Now, if you haven't played the game yourself, you probably have no clue what I meant when I just said pal Percy. But trust me, we will be getting very familiar with him soon. But for now, the pal Percy is the main mechanic of this game. It is essentially a Tamagotchi toy that we must attend to for progress and survival throughout the night. It has little tasks or mini-games that we must complete during any downtime we get in the night, which becomes more and more scarce as the game progresses. Feed him, fill his bowl, and play catch with him, or else he will make an extremely irritating noise and attract animatronics. On top of this, as I mentioned before, you can only progress the night by completing these mini-games on the pal Percy. Every time you complete one of the tasks on the device, the bar at the bottom of the small screen fills up, and once it's full, the night automatically completes, meaning you have control over how long a given night lasts. This night one essentially is a practice run, allowing you to get familiar with the cameras and the pal Percy alongside its tasks. Once the night is complete, you can move on to the post-night task. The Monday post-night task has us sitting at a computer, ironic, and we're responsible for managing these online auctions to sell the animatronics, and making sure they're sold for the desired price. But Charlie Cat doesn't want this to happen, as he randomly darts from one side of the room to the other, which, if you hear the sound cue for, you have to dart beneath the desk and wait until Charlie has walked across the room. Around halfway through the minigame, the difficulty is slightly cranked up. Charlie lingers around the office as you hide for longer periods of time, and even managing the bidding auctions becomes more difficult. But overall, the minigame was pretty easy and pretty fun. This leads us to Tuesday night. Tuesday wasn't too much of a jump in difficulty since it only adds one character, but the character is a little complex. You see, Farmer Felix will walk across the window ahead of you. Before he reaches the other side, you have to take note of the color of his eyes and input one of the 4 corresponding colors. Fail to do this and Felix will drain all the building's power, followed by a really cool jump scare. That's pretty much the only main change from night 1, so let's move on to, oh, sorry Percy pal, you're not looking so good. Well, I'm sure that's not important. Attack of the Space Dogs is the first thing we see on our second post-night task. If you press enter to start as instructed, the instructions on how to survive are also included with the instructions on how to play the arcade game, which I thought was a cool little detail. Essentially, you have to play this arcade game and get to a score of 6,000, while Mother Moose is trying to reach you from behind. If you hear her rustling in the background, you have to turn around and flash her. It seems pretty simple, but honestly this may be my favorite post-night minigame, simply for the tensity it causes. You see, Mother Moose can go for a long time without appearing, causing you to get focused just a bit too hard on the game a bit more than you should, especially if you get easily distracted like me. This scared me multiple times because I'd realized that I was too focused on the arcade game and I'd turn around and flash nothing just to feel safe. Very fun, very cool. Real quick, I want to thank IntrepidandBold and TheUnchangingJimmy for being my channel members. If you want cool benefits or just to support my videos, please consider joining these guys as my channel members. Or don't, because my videos don't cost money, so just enjoy. Wednesdays where I started to feel things get a bit more hectic in the gameplay department, but still looking back on it, everything was just getting started. The third night introduces the Playful Poodle and the titular Percy Poodle, both characters that like to mess with the door. Essentially, Percy will just appear in the window ahead of you to stare at you and taunt you. So you can pretty much ignore him for now. You mainly want to worry about him once he reaches the door like you see here, because at any second he could pull a Jack Torrance from The Shining and pound on the door. Once this starts, you have to hold the door locked shut until he goes away. Then there's the Playful Poodle. Man, is this a video game or the gym locker room? Because there are PPs all over the place. The Playful Poodle will crack open your door, and if you don't stop what you're doing and close it on them, they'll eventually open the door and it'll be stuck that way. So once Percy reaches the door, there's nothing to stop him. That's not all that's special this night. For whatever reason, once you've filled the bar on your pal Percy, the power totally shuts down. It's quite a confusing moment that genuinely weirded me out, but this feeling quickly subsided as I was forced to prepare for the third post-night task. The Wednesday night post-shift task involved someone that I would come to despise, and his name is Rowan Rat. Regardless, you're here to perform a power repair after the shutdown from the night section, and you have to complete a small series of random minigames to get things reset. This one kind of reminded me of the night in Sister Location with Funtime Freddy, where you're also resetting the power, although as you're performing your task, Rowan Rat will randomly appear in the holes behind you. When this happens, you have to turn and flash your light on him. I will say, this is probably the easiest Pote Night game to survive in my personal opinion. I don't know why I said Pote Night instead of Post Night, and then I never corrected it, so I'm sorry, it will never happen again. Sinful and wrong. The minigames don't make too much noise and Rowan Rat's sound cue is pretty obvious, but doing this minigame quickly is much more of a challenge. Before we continue on to Thursday night, we are greeted with a mid-game cutscene. Our player character Nick seems to be on the phone or leaving a message for the boss, telling him things are going well despite the animatronics malfunctioning. But he points out that specifically the pal Percy has been acting strange, probably because it keeps making faces like this. Nick hangs up the phone and on his way out of the building, he stops himself when he notices a CD on the ground. The game lets you choose between taking it or leaving, but come on, of course you're gonna take it! When Nick gets home, he tries to get the CD to work properly on his television. He eventually gives up though and leaves. Luckily, we get to stay and watch what's truly on the CD after Nick has left the room. And it seems to be recording or a potential broadcast copy announcing that all pal Percys were to be recalled, as it was discovered to have adverse effects on children who use it for extended periods of time. The notice instructs people who own a pal Percy to dispose of it immediately. I'm getting the feeling Nick should have seen this. Oh well. Thursday night. What a peaceful and quaint night. Wait, Who are you? Thursday introduces another playful poodle and Rowan Rat. Rowan Rat is responsible for probably half of the deaths in my first run of Playtime with Percy. And his mechanic relies very heavily on this playful poodle's mechanic. Let me explain. The playful poodle will make a little sound cue whenever he is out and about. You have to find him as quickly as possible on the cameras and stare at the one he's on, till he eventually goes away. Fail to do this, and he will eliminate your cameras entirely. Now, up until now, that wouldn't be a big deal, but the cameras are necessary for Rowan Rat. The cameras now have a motion detection system which guides us to the camera where Rowan is. If we see him on any one of the 4 corner cameras, we have to zap him. Because there are now 7 animatronics with a total of 8 mechanics involved during the night, it's extremely chaotic, and I had to adapt quickly. And Rowan Rat was the only character in these nights that didn't have an obvious audio or visual cue that he had when he was active. Meaning it was up to me to always remember to check on the motion detectors, which I did not do for a while. But as much as I struggled with this at first, I think it's a really clever and challenging mechanic, and once I'd gotten into the rhythm, I was able to get through night 4 with general ease. As you can guess, we've got another post-night task up next. This time, Farmer Felix is in need of repairs, and the dreadful, playful poodles are after us this time. The pattern here is similar to some of the previous After Shift minigames, so I'll try to keep it brief. Essentially, there are some more minigames you have to complete to begin a reboot for our friend Felix here. But if we hear any of the playful poodles, we've got to exit Felix's head and click on them to get them to leave. Once we've completed the reboot, it's time to move on to our final shift at Percy's Playhouse. Friday night is an awesome test of your skills. No new animatronics, no new mechanics, just mastering everything we've learned for a good final challenge. As you can see from the footage, I am constantly moving to make sure everything is attended to. There is 0 downtime in a given night in this game, and you can see how this impacts gameplay. You can also probably see that my pal Percy toy is starting to look a little more psychotic than before.
Did I jump scare you?
But that's not important. What is important is that this night is a great challenge, forcing you to have decent understanding of every mechanic the game has to offer. Now, I want to say that this is your last chance to stop watching this video and to play the game instead. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you come back to watch the rest, but the game is genuinely worth your time, and you should experience it yourself if you can. I'll give you a second to click off this video before I get into the rest of the game. Okay, let's continue. This momentous night is then followed up by a very ominous post-night task. As we've come to expect, we're tasked with a small series of minigames. Someone was supposed to repair the rest of the animatronics, but it seems that our pal Percy Poodle here is in need of some more repairs. And as we've come to expect, we have to complete a small series of minigames. But unlike the usual, there's no animatronic or playful poodle that's trying to stop us. At first I thought maybe it was like the repair minigames from Sister Location and Help Wanted, but the minigames were simple and straightforward, and there didn't seem to be a punishment or jump scare for failing them. I was just repairing Percy the night before the building was scheduled to be demolished, just as planned. But then, poof. Percy's battery fails and begins smoking. At the same time, we get a call from the boss, and he's concerned, wondering where Nick is. Nick lets him know what's going on and asks what he needs to do. The boss lets him know he either needs to find a replacement battery or a substitute. After the call ends, this inspires Nick to try something. Well, Playtime with Percy. What a great experience. I thought it was pretty good, just a quick and to the point experience. not much else to see here. But to be quite honest, the one big gripe I had with the game is that it could have been a little bit longer. Wait, what? Hey, what's going on? Okay, that's right. We aren't even close to being done. The marriage of the forms of Pal Percy and Percy Poodle, now just known simply as Pal, wants it to be known that he is our one and only friend, and he wants it to stay that way forever. We run to a nearby storage area for safety, and we begin looking for things to help fight back. This is when we find the EM Percy. If we fill the bar at the bottom, it'll release an electromagnetic pulse, which, if done enough times, should weaken Pal long enough for us to get help. Real quick, I want to make note of the amazing soundtrack here. The music has been fantastic the entire time, but the music here is a banger and totally fits and makes this segment just that much more tense. Phase 1 of our bout with Pal is our chance to familiarize ourselves with the new minigames on the EM Percy device, since there is only one mechanic we have to deal with in this phase. Essentially, these TVs by the door will flash creepy messages if Pal is active. This means we have to flip up our cameras and find him. But that's not all. We only need to see him to see what toy he's looking for. Once we've done this, we can skim through the cameras and find his toy for him. It's a fairly complex mechanic, especially compared to what we've dealt with so far. Once we've let out one EMP blast, we can progress to phase 2. This introduces the cart mechanic and 2 new animatronics to accompany it. Basically, there are 2 rolling carts to the left and right of the door. We need these to deal with the Poodle Pals and the Tamabrudi. I think that's how you pronounce that. The Poodle Pals can't actually hurt you, but when they're around, they invert your controls for certain things, making very menial tasks difficult the longer they're around. So you have to use the carts to run them over. And the Tamabrudi will bang on the walls in an attempt to break in. So you have to hold the carts against the walls, depending on which direction it sounds like they're coming from. Hold on, pause the video real quick. Look at this stupid moron. This definitely makes for a chaotic segment, but this still isn't too tough. The third phase is where it started to get overwhelming. Pal now has a second mechanic. It is very similar to his mechanic in the regular night shifts, but instead of slowly making his way towards the door, he just goes into a full-on sprint and bangs his hands on the door. But you deal with it in the same way, by holding the door shut on him. On top of this, we have another evil Pal Percy toy, Tammy Opti. Tammy Opti only appears in the cameras. Whenever he leaves the middle camera, there is a loud sound cue that plays, letting you know to search the corner cameras for them and shock them. Failing to do so results in them coming through the hole in the ceiling, and surprise surprise, you get jump scared. There's also another mechanic for the Poodle Pals in this phase. If you hear a laugh and your screen starts to flicker, that means he is somewhere on the cameras and you need to stare him down. The longer you fail to do this, your vision will stay flickering and eventually he will lock up your carts. Quick note for this. I didn't read the tips properly at the top of the screen, so I thought this was a glitch, but in reality I am just a peasant from the medieval ages because I didn't know how to read. The footage you're watching is from a later try because when I originally tried to beat it, I enjoyed it, but I played terribly and it was so embarrassing that I want to make sure that footage is never seen. Alright, cool, thank you. As I mentioned before, this phase is where potential downtime for the EM Percy minigames was getting really tight, but I had no idea what I was in for. Phase 4 starts with probably my favorite moment in the whole game.
Don't you get it? I'm your best pal, and we'll be together forever.
He ends this statement with a very manic laugh that then works its way into the soundtrack. I mean, come on. This is peak. During this portion, the only new mechanic that's introduced is the Tamirochis. Excuse me. They will slowly appear all over your screen during the night, and not only will they get in the way of your cameras, but if enough of them recover your screen, they can kill you. So don't let that happen. You have to click and drag them away. Then, okay. Phase 5 is where things get as difficult as possible, at least in the main campaign. The screens can now be covered by a clip of Percy, which you have to click away. The reason this is an issue is because if Percy is active on the cameras, we would no longer have any way of knowing without physically checking. And the final mechanic in this boss fight, Pal Percy, will come down from the crack in the ceiling and display a simple cup game. They'll go away if you pick the correct cup, but if not, it'll end your night. Even if you do succeed, it is a big distraction anyway, so it's a very cool mechanic. Quick note, the jump scare you get when you fail the cup game is probably my favorite in the whole game. Now, I know that I said that Friday night was the test of our collective skills, but this final phase of our long and intense attempt at survival is truly the final challenge. The lump sum of every skill and the ultimate test of time management and reaction time. I remember a little while back, the developer of the game, FazzyFunBear, announced in his Discord server that they'd finished coding the boss and he thinks people are really going to like it. I can say with an incredibly high degree of certainty that all of your hard work and passion has paid off. This whole fight has multiple memorable moments and makes for an extremely rewarding challenge. Once you've filled up the EM Percy one last time, it goes off and you no longer have to use it. And for the first time, you're given the opportunity to exclusively focus on the poodles and Tamagotchi toys on their way to kill you. And as long as we survive just a little bit longer, the light will slowly fade and we'll have made it. In the final cutscene, Pal finally gets through the storage room door and tries one last time to convince Nick to just accept that they're best pals that need to be together forever. He grabs a hold of Nick, preparing to give him the good old, "If I can't have you, no one can," before we hear a new voice. We were stuck inside the building for so long, the building's demolition has begun. Nick decides to leave Pal behind and escape the building while he can. We see the boss wave us down and Nick desperately tries to explain what was going on, but just comes off as deranged. Although this does lead the boss to briefly relay to Nick what we learned earlier from the CD, that being that the Pal Percy toys were recalled for essentially going crazy. Nick decides to ignore it for now and just kinda laugh it off. Just happy that he was able to get out of there alive. The end. Yes, the credits on screen this time are real, and I'm gonna leave it on screen during my closing thoughts because I think all the names here deserve to be seen. Everything from the art style to the music, the gameplay and sound design, Playtime with Percy was an awesome game and an absolute pleasure to play. As I've said in the past, modern day Five Nights at Freddy's has been disappointing to many, excluding Ruin, but I'll talk about that another time. And where official FNAF falters, the fans create their own content to fill the hole that things like Security Breach leaves, and games like Playtime with Percy exemplify that quality best in my mind. To be honest, I spent a while thinking about the potential downsides to Percy's because I don't want to seem unfair or biased, but I just couldn't think of anything substantial or even worth mentioning. Every time I died, I felt like it was my fault, and every time I succeeded, I felt a great sense of accomplishment. It did a perfect job of squishing those little dopamine glands in my head, and I hope, if you haven't already, that you give this game a shot. You won't regret it. Wait a second, where was my gift basket?
Where's the rest? FazzyFunBear. Gift basket.
I want to take a second to thank FazzyFunBear, not only for making this great experience, but for letting me try it early. If you want updates on his awesome stuff, go join his Discord server and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I also want to thank Squeaks DeCorgay again for introducing me to this game in the first place. He's also an incredibly talented game dev, so I would go wishlist his game Shipwrecked 64 on Steam now. And now this is the part of the video where I thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing, or even joining the Discord server. If you made it this far, type anti-disestablishmentarianism in the comments, and I hopefully will see you in the next one. Adios.
Please like, subscribe, and send money to Who Knows What.
Now don't disappoint me.